I'm an investor. I focus on crypto because I love where it's going. This technology is going to change the world in many areas. And as an investor, what I try to do is see where things are going and get there first. It is my belief that blockchain gaming will devour traditional gaming and that in the future, all games will be blockchain games, though they'll probably just be called the gaming industry, that most all games will have some kind of ownership behind them. In January 2019, I invested in an early startup project called Axie Infinity. That project went down for the next 18 months, and that sucked. But my thesis was correct, and from where I purchased to the top, prices went 3,000x, even though I hadn't even invested at the bottom. Now, I believe Axie is a fairly simple game, and their gameplay was much too simple to continue at that growth pace. But still, the game continues to make incredible revenues for their developers. And Axie was the first of what I believe will likely be a number of huge success stories in the gaming sector. But as an investor, I'm always open to being wrong. I invited our guest Banlocker to join us today to look at where gaming is right now. And does blockchain gaming really have a chance of succeeding because it seems so far behind? Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do know I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. And I've started a gaming channel to really dive deeper myself into gaming and where traditional gaming is at, so I can really see where blockchain gaming is going. And one of my good long-term friends, we've known each other since kids, is Banlocker, who also has an amazing background in investing and done incredible things in his life. And I asked him to join us on this live stream, and let's just talk about where gaming is and blockchain gaming. He's also been involved in the crypto space and has some good expertise to share with everyone. Banlocker, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Now you have nice a intro. New YouTube channel. You've been doing YouTube for a long time, but a new YouTube channel covering most traditional gaming.
Yeah, I think kind of like you. Well, I had a finance YouTube channel and I still have it, but I don't post on it anymore because I don't really enjoy it. And I got into YouTube and making videos as a creator. I wanted to do something that I enjoyed. And so I kind of started fresh, and I've gone more into the live stream gaming sector of video creation. I enjoy this a lot more. It's a lot less like video editing and a lot more talking about stuff that I actually enjoy as a pastime.
Right. What's interesting is you actually at a very young age were involved in the ideas behind Unreal Engine, essentially. This new idea of how to make gaming complex, where you have the complexity of everything around you, but bigger worlds, and being able to compute that. And you were involved in game development at a young age.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was back in high school. I was working for a PC game startup, and the primary developer was working on some revolutionary technology, some of which we actually see today in gaming, but didn't exist back then. At the time, the best type of game engine that existed was that for Quake, for 3D graphics. And that was revolutionary at the time. And, just like most indie game companies, it ended up not succeeding, but I had a great opportunity to work with a lot of very specific tools and get a deeper understanding of the industry. For example, if your viewers know anything about 3D graphic design, one of the current softwares that's commonly used to create 3D characters in video games is called Maya. Well, back then, the same company existed, but it was Alias Wavefront, and they essentially would sell you these silicon graphics machines for like 20, 30 grand, which was an astronomical amount of money back then. And, being in high school, I was working on these computers that were worth, in today's money, equivalently like $50,000, $60,000. So it was a good experience. It's not what I pursued as my long-term career, but I did get a deeper understanding of gaming in general since then.
Yeah, you've been looking in, as I have been, looking at the space of blockchain gaming versus traditional gaming. And I have had a number of conversations about where is this going to go, and I'm curious as to if my thesis is correct. I'd like to show a little bit about where traditional gaming is to the audience to really get a feel for where blockchain gaming is versus traditional gaming. I've got queued up a new trailer for a new game coming out. This is a new MMO. And you and I both looked at this the other day, and it was like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
So far ahead, right? So this is Chrono Odyssey. If you're watching, sure, will you let me know if you can hear the audio correctly? Sometimes I have audio problems with StreamYard, especially when sharing a screen like this. Look at the graphics behind that. Isn't that stunning?
Yeah, the Unreal. I assume they're using the Unreal Engine, and it's gotten so impressive. Even with
the way the light hits it, and what's so complex about 3D gaming like this, which Banlocker had some experience to, is how do you store so much data and be able to, over an internet connection, be able to send that to the servers and the computer to be able to not slow and bog everything down. And so to have this much detail and have the game like an MMO, the actual play, and have these kind of graphics is a really difficult problem to solve. So this is a little bit about where traditional gaming is going. Mm-hmm. This is where blockchain gaming is right now, and let me share that.
Is here, and with it brings a whole bunch of the balance
has been changed. So around. In the past, the video I wanted to share, but
fear of running out of time.
This is where blockchain gaming currently is, right? With Axie Infinity being the number one, and this is a more simplistic model, right? But this is where currently blockchain gaming is. I'll give another little bit better, more relevant example.
Yeah, it's just not even close. Let's be honest.
Sharing that.
So this is Illuvium Overworld, right? And they are like much better.
Keep one of the skins.
Yeah, there's also Walker World by Crypto Walkers, an NFT project, and they have been continuously developing. Unlike most NFT projects, they've actually continued developing long after their initial drop, and their Walker World is really impressive.
Yeah, in fact, I could probably find some video of that Walker. I've seen,
and I believe they are using the Unreal Engine as well. But something that we had previously kind of talked a little bit about, I think a lot of crypto gaming is going to kind of go in the traditional path of building the games on these centralized servers using game engines like Unreal Engine, and then essentially taking snapshots of people's wallets, either in-game or prior to starting the game, looking at their NFTs, and then saying like, okay, you have this NFT, we're going to give you the equivalent weapon in-game, but actually incorporating the exact NFT into the game It might happen, but I think that's actually a long ways off if it does.
Yeah, as we were discussing this, like how is it that blockchain gaming goes global, right? It has to be able to compete with traditional gaming. Now, blockchain brings something traditional gaming doesn't really have, which is ownership. And the lack of ownership sucks, right? Because you don't own all those items. You might have spent $2,000 in a game buying cosmetics and even other things, and you don't own any of it. And that sucks. It also sucks because you might have an item that's very rare, and over time, some of these MMOs last 10 or 20 or 30 years. And some of those items from the early days could end up having significant value if you did have ownership. Because with ownership comes the ability to transfer it and transfer it for a monetary value. And without ownership, you don't really have value there. But with ownership, some of these items could make people millionaires in games if those items become valuable enough. But none of that exchange ever happens because you don't have ownership. And that's something blockchain can bring to the space. But how do we get from blockchain gaming, the level of Axie Infinity or, Illuvium is a big step up. And Axie is meant for like mobile, right? So it's not going to compete with a PC game taking huge amounts of resources. Illuvium Overworld is more going to compete with that. Illuvium has another game called Illuvium Zero that's more going to be a mobile game that's kind of like Clash of Clans type. And so you do have different things, but how do we get from blockchain gaming being interesting enough to compete with things like this new game, Chrono Odyssey, coming out? Because even though they introduce ownership, if it's not interesting enough, you're not going to have mass adoption.
Yeah, and the other big thing is these game companies are not interested in decentralizing their item bank. It does them no favors, right? They want complete control over their games and the items that they incorporate. And so the only way that blockchain is actually going to get incorporated into mainstream gaming is if Blizzard and these other big gaming companies are forced into it because of competition that's rising from these indie game companies. So we're going to have to see Illuvium and Crypto Walkers and all these different essentially crypto worlds succeed and gain an audience before Blizzard starts saying like, we might actually have to, start incorporating this into our product. Otherwise we're going to lose out.
Yeah, nobody wants to compete with that, right? They love this idea. In fact, I've heard behind the scenes they talk about this idea. It's called trapped value. Well, you're not going to leave our game because you've invested $2,000 over the past 6 years buying all our different skins and everything, and then you won't get to use it. So we've got you trapped. And they talk about this as a good thing, right? It's a good thing for them. It's called misaligned interest. Their interest, the game developers company's interests, are misaligned from ours. What's interesting, though, and what Axie Infinity did so very well, they took a very brave step, because after their initial Axie sale, their Origin Axies, they did a few other types of Axie sales to raise some money. But after that, you could only get Axies through breeding. They did do a round one land sale where they sold off 1/4 of their land, and they raised some funds that way. And then Animoca Brands came in and partnered with them, and it really helped them fill out their team and make some good strategic decisions. But then they did this thing that was really, really interesting. They got off of ETH and went to their own chain, and they decided they were going to make money on just taking a small transaction fee as people exchange value between themselves. We're going to allow a lot of people to capture value through playing the game and earning smooth love potions so that breeding can happen, and then people breeding, and we're going to let them earn all that money minus a small transaction fee, and that's how we're going to make our revenues, that small transaction fee. Would you know they made $1 billion in revenue with that small transaction fee, which is far more than most game makers ever make, by getting out of the way and letting people exchange value and just taking a small a very small transaction fee, 4.25%. And so what's funny is there's no trap value. They didn't focus on trapping value. They focused on let's allow a situation where people can extract value themselves and just take a tiny piece of that. And the amount of volume that went on blows away the revenues for most game makers in the world. And they did hit 10th out of the top 10 played games in the world, like number 10, which means the amount of people playing it was still very low, because, you have your big 1, 2, and then it gets like way down to number 10. And yet their revenues were crushing it. And it showed that this model worked, but I don't know that most game makers really caught that part of it. Or if they did, they don't know how to think about things that way. It's too much of a shift for them.
Yeah, and that type of rev share actually drives, it creates a lot of brand loyalty as well. Even if people spend more money on the brand than the money that they make back from, shared revenue. And it's one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about with Vivi. Now, I love Vivi. I have a lot of the collectibles, and I have a lot of the OMI token, but they have trapped value. You can't sell your assets and exchange it for the token, get that out. And so, when I see some of the assets on the Vivi app, if I can't sell it, if I buy a asset on there for $500, even if it goes up to $1,000, if I can't take that out and actually use it in the real world, then I'm much less likely to buy more expensive assets. And
you can now take that out in fiat. You pay like a 10% withdrawal fee, but you can.
Oh, there is that now.
Oh yeah, and they've had that for about 8 months.
Okay, I must have missed that
right
one.
But you can't exchange it to like the OMI token, withdraw the OMI token. That might come in the future, but you can actually withdraw in fiat. So and that came out when about 9 months ago. So it's been out. They beta tested it with a few people, and then I got an early beta test invite, but I'm like, I'm not cashing out. Like prices are down. So I haven't cashed out anything personally, but yes, you can.
There's also too, I think a lot of crypto projects, NFT projects that have kind of started to incorporate this. And this is what people really expected from the NFT market when they first started buying these NFTs. The whole idea was that they were buying these NFTs and that there was going to be some type of shared revenue related to owning these, with the development of future IPs related to it, like merch sales, game sales, all that stuff. And instead, a lot of these people just kind of took the money and ran. There's been a few that have continued on with their project development, and one that I've actually invested in is called Angry Ape Army. They have a rewards program where they plan to share 44% of the revenue generated from merch sales and other brand deals with those who own the original apes. And that's something that you don't see in a lot of projects. So I agree with you. As soon as these crypto gaming projects, NFT projects realize that it's if we give these people just a little bit of a kickback, we take a 3 or 4% cut with every single sale transaction, and then we just give 1% back to all the people that, either own the token or own this NFT or whatever. All of a sudden, people are just going to plow into the project.
Yeah, and that
there's
idea.
Billions. I mean, there's billions
of the
in games
that have tried that idea have failed, but it had more to do with the timing wasn't right. Their idea was good, but what we are in as crypto investors is we're early stage venture capital investors. And like the indie game development company that you worked for years ago, it didn't make it. Why? Because so many startups don't. And so a few of the ways that I try to use so that I have some wins, because you're going to have some losses in this space, is researching the team behind it, also researching their idea, because I think you're right, Banlocker, that some of these NFT projects, like Angry Ape Army has done a good job. They have sneakers coming out related to their brand, right? And this is while the market's way down. And what we see is, like, I remember when CryptoPunks did terrible in the last bear market. You could buy a CryptoPunk for 1 ETH, which was going for about $100. And then CryptoPunks went up to like $300,000 and some crazy price, right? Some going for over $1 million. And so in the bear market, most projects really suffer, and they just try to get through it. And Angry Ape Army is really cool. I don't own any. I know you do, and a few of our friends do. And I felt like I kind of missed out because they did go up pretty well. They had a nice wave. They went up to like 5 or 8.
Well, they're back down. They're pretty cheap right now.
I know, right? Now it's a good time to get in, and they have some sneakers coming out. But what's funny is even bullish news like that, like, few people pay attention to in a bear market. So there's a lot of different deals out there that are still risky. Like, they could run out of funding, they could run out of steam, and pull the plug in and fail. But if they don't fail and they keep plugging away and making good relationships, their concept is really good. Like Illuvium has a revenue distribution concept. And one of the fears of the projects of pushing this too much is that the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is in the way, because the U.S. SEC, based on rules that were written 100 years ago, wants to deem anything that buyers may actually benefit from. They want to deem them as a security, which would put them under huge amounts of regulatory oversight. And in new companies, most new companies don't have the finances to make sure that they're compliant with that, especially since the U.S. has not been clear on what the regulations are. Now, there's a chance the U.S. House of Representatives trying to push through a crypto bill that might clarify some of that. And I don't know what's supposed to be in that crypto bill as to whether I'd be really happy about it or not. But what I'd love to see is new regulations, because 100 years ago, what politicians decided after the stock market crash is everybody who's not an accredited investor doesn't get to invest in where most of the money is made because it's too risky. And when you have losses,
right?
Well, you're not a big boy or big girl, so you don't get to incur those risks so that you never incur those losses. And everyone's like, yeah, go protect us. And I'm like, F that. How do you ever go from poor to rich when you're locked out of the ability to invest in anything that has some risk associated? Because nothing has high rewards without some risk associated with it. And
I completely agree.
Gary Gensler
it's such
very
classism.
pushing that, right? Oh, you poor crypto people, we need to protect you from yourselves. You don't know what you're doing. Let us lock all of you out of it so my friends at Goldman Sachs, the smart, wise ones, can come in to decide which crypto companies and projects should make it, and let them make all the money. And then we'll let them sell to you in 3 years in an initial public offering to you after prices have already 200x, so that you can take a lower risk. I mean, you can buy it on the IPO when they're dumping it on your heads at 300x over what prices are now. And that's the world that Gary Gensler is trying to recreate, because that's what they've had in stocks. In stocks, you can't invest in early stage VC investing unless you're an accredited investor. In fact, you know, if you get a pitch deck from them and everything, you're like, yeah, this looks amazing. I think this has a good chance to succeed. They'll say, well, we need a letter from you showing that you're an accredited investor or you can invest. Oh, but I'm ever going to become a millionaire if I can't invest in things like that. Well, I don't know, but you have to figure it out, because Gary Gensler wants to protect you.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty disgusting, the idea where it's like, oh, you only get paid, say, $100,000 a year. Oh, it's like, you're not smart enough to make risky investment decisions. You must be an idiot. Like, it's like,
No.
what? Yeah.
Come back to us when your net worth is over 2 million,
Right.
and then we'll let you invest in this risky stuff. Wait, how do I get my net worth to 2 million if I can't invest
still
in
under
the
the
risky
boot.
stuff? Well, probably you can't. Isn't that great?
Yeah. It's amazing that even laws like that still exist here in the United States. They've opened up a little bit over the past decade, which has been good, but still there's a lot of regulation, too much.
I hope
in
this
that
creates
respect.
the dialogue for reforming that, right? Because this stuff was written after a major stock crash, right? Which happened after a major boom. Because what happens? People chase green candles. What's interesting is some people make the arguments that help me understand why some politicians pass stuff like that. You see it in the crypto space all the time. In fact, while prices are down right now, what do you see? Oh, everything's just a scam. This is a scam, and they're all scams. And I'm like, oh, what happened? You either invested with money you couldn't afford to lose. You're not smart enough financially to understand that things go through cycles and that right now is a down cycle. And so you're making the case for Gary Gensler as to why you should have never been allowed to invest in this space, because you're definitely not emotionally prepared to invest in this space. Now, I think people should still be allowed to be stupid if they're going to be stupid. I think people should still be allowed to ride bikes, even though you might crash on your bike and skin your knee and break your arm or even die. I don't think the government should tell people they can't ride bikes anymore because you might crash in the mountainside, going down a trail and die. But that's what they're doing financially is, oh, you can't take any risks. We're not going to let you ride your bike at all because you might fall off and break your arm. And that's what they're saying financially. Oh, unless you're worth, what does it take to be a accredited investor these days? Is it $1 million or $2 million in assets?
Yeah, it's over $1 million in assets, and I think over 200,000 a year if you file individually
For 2 years, right?
Yeah, something like
For
that.
2
I'm not.
years in a
Yeah,
row.
you have to have history of it, and you have to expect to make 200,000 the year that you go in to be accredited. Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing is too. I mean, they'll let you buy into a multi-level marketing company, but they won't let you invest in what they call risky assets. So it's like multi-level marketing. Yeah, like some people can do well in it, but the majority of people don't, and it actually requires active. You have to be like good at sales, and you have to have all of these different skills involved to be successful in multi-level marketing, where it's like if you invest in the right company early on, you don't have to do anything. You just give them your money and you just sit there. So
What's
yeah,
funny about
it's
that discussion is like multi-level marketing always sells you on the idea of passive income, right? But what I noticed from people that made a lot of money from multi-level marketing, even them that have made a ton of money, they always have to keep churning. It is an endless stream of work. And no, they can't just retire and coast, because then their team all wants to retire and coast and then it dies. Whereas good, solid investing, making money on other people's assets. And do you realize that that's what Gary Gensler wants to deem a security? When you're making money from other people's efforts, that's a security, and we can't let you invest in that. Okay, we'll let you invest in it, but only in the later stages after the initial public offering, when all the early VCs, do you realize that in IPO, early VCs are dumping on the public's head? Now, it may still go up from there. If you had bought at Google's IPO, from back then till now, it's probably done a 3,000x from 30 years ago from their IPO. What was it? It would have been about 2002-ish. So 20 years ago, maybe a 3,000x. But that's one of the top performing companies in the world. And over 20 years, it's done about a 3,000x. And so that once it had already made massive gains, and the early VCs invested in Google and made their thousands of X's over a period of about 6 years, then as the public, you were then allowed to buy it at the IPO, which boils my blood, because I grew up poor and I didn't want to always be poor. My parents had a number of kids, a ton of kids, and they had enough income to live very well with about one kid. And they had it, or to live decently with about one kid, but they had, like, let's just say more than half a dozen.
You guys had a Dr. Pepper machine in your garage. I remember that. I thought that was the
but it
coolest
had to do with
thing ever.
Yeah, we seemed like we were rich because we had a Dr. Pepper machine, but you had to buy them, right? And even we had to buy them because that's what paid for the Cokes going into it. Yeah, I know, right? All the neighbors would come over and use the Dr. Pepper machine. And they thought we were rich because of it. Yeah. When we were doing pretty well in my life, my parents would spend $25 on our birthday. So that's how rich we were, $25. And that seemed like a big deal to me. What I realized in life is anything you wanted to have, you had to go out and earn to achieve, because there was no free lunch. $25 a year on my birthday wasn't going to buy a whole lot. So I did get my first job at 8 so I could learn how to have money. And that's what made me interested in investing, right? Because investing is like, just came up with the question, well, there's all these rich people. How did they get rich? And, at first everyone's like, oh, they inherited it. But that's not true. Only maybe 15%. But if you read this book called The Millionaire Next Door, you find out that the average inherited wealth is blown through in 2 years. So most people who inherit their wealth don't even have the skills to keep it. They don't know how to work with money, and they just blow through it in 2 years. Most actual wealth is achieved and accumulated by people who learn how to think about things.
And oftentimes come from really poor circumstances.
A bunch of them.
I almost feel like you look at, some of these people. I mean, most people that even come from middle class families don't even achieve what a lot of these people that came from nothing did. There's so much opportunity in the United States. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you go overseas, even in Mexico, and it's like people working over in over in the farms in Mexico are making like $1, $2 a day, and they're trying to feed a family of 4 on that. I mean, it's literally a slave wage. Here in the United States, even if you have nothing, you still get a free education. You still get food stamps. You still have all of these other social benefits. So it's like, here, even people in the worst situations generally have an opportunity to make something of themselves. It's the beauty of the country that we live in, honestly.
Well, and I would include North America and Canada, because Canada too, it's like, and some countries in Europe and in Mexico, it's not that you can't go from poor. Trust me, if you feel like there's a glass ceiling in the US, that glass ceiling is like bulletproof glass in like some of these countries like Mexico. So I vacationed to this place in Mexico a number of times, and I had some friends that would go there a lot. And they saw this guy that was running a stand, a little taco stand. And it's like every time we were there, his taco stand would make some improvements. So he was taking some of his profits, improving on his taco stand. And it was getting bigger and bigger. And like the guy was just awesome, super service oriented. And then one day he wasn't there. And we're like, wait, what happened to him? And the people were like, oh, the government said he didn't have a license. So he can't do the taco stand anymore. In other words, he was getting too big. He was succeeding, and he got shut down. Why? Well, corruption, right? And there's corruption in the US and Canada. Don't get me wrong. Like the big boys do not want you to succeed. There's just less of it. There's always going to be that glass ceiling. You just have to be strong enough to push through it. And in other countries, that glass ceiling, it's not that you can't break it. It's just stronger.
To give you an idea, I heard this statistic recently. A third of all startup companies over in Silicon Valley are started by Indians, like people from Asia, Asian Indians. And that gives you, a lot of those people they're like first generation here, second generation. I mean, their parents essentially came here with almost nothing. And it's just within the culture of how they train their kids to actually think and what to get educated in and where to live and all of these things to make themselves successful.
Yeah, totally agreed. It's a value on education and personal industry and thrift, right? We saw leading up to World War II, a lot of people immigrated from Europe, especially of a certain religion, the Jewish religion. They came to the US and they worked hard, right? So they came here with nothing and they were willing to work hard. And like, I read this story about a lot of Jewish immigrants to New York, and they would work in these textile factories and they would save their money, pool their money, and then buy their own machine. And they were just super hardworking, and very industrious. And over the next 30 years, some of those people that had started at the bottom were some of the wealthiest in New York, and it's inspiring. You see that from India. And part of the reason so much from certain places do so well is their cultural belief in education and hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But whether that's a cultural belief or not from whatever country anyone's in, what's cool is if they come to certain places. And I do think Europe, you can make it to. It's just a little bit easier in the US and a little bit easier in Canada than some places in Europe. But if you're in a place that you're stuck, then go somewhere where you can be unstuck. Now, here's what's funny enough is one of the things that creates this glass ceiling is corruption. And what are we seeing right now in the US? A fight with corruption. Why does Gary Gensler, what's so interesting is the same person 4 years ago was teaching at Harvard before he was the chairman of the SEC. And what did he say back then before when he gave you his true opinion? Well, he said that 75% of the crypto industry was probably not a security. Wait, what? That's so different than what he's been saying now. Why is what he's saying now different? Well, that is the question. Why is what he's saying now different? Who got to him?
One of the things you're also seeing, I feel like Europe has been doing a much better job on regulating these large companies and preventing them from becoming monopolies. For example, recently, Microsoft was trying to acquire Blizzard Activision largely because of their gaming IP. They wanted to control Call of Duty and all these big games created through Blizzard, Diablo 4. And the U.S. wasn't the people that kind of stopped them. And, it's funny. Microsoft was kind of like, oh, yeah, we'll kind of like share this IP and let it be on other consoles, have it be multi-console for a few years and all these things and trying to placate all the, I'm straight up lying.
I know, right? For a few years. Well, probably that's the truth until
for a few years.
For a few
until they develop the new version of it, where it's only
Xbox exclusive. Yeah.
Yes, and the same thing where like they would have to go to their online store in order to purchase it. All of these things, and it was the UK that said like, no, we're not going to let you do that. Like that's way out of bounds. And so the US though, same thing with like, think about the chargers with Apple. That was another thing where finally Europe was like, dude, you guys start using USB-C. All these dumb proprietary chargers where you charge these astronomical prices, that's over. And it wasn't the US that kind of shut that down. And
what's interesting is industry and government in the US is more in bed than it has been in I don't know how many decades. But they are deeply in bed with each other. That's what's happened with Gary Gensler is somebody got to him. And so corporate interests and government are working hand in hand like this. And you see this in these mega monopolies, and you just hit the nail on the head. And that's what's trying to hold back crypto, right? And their biggest focus is DeFi. Less on the gaming space, which is part of the reason why my investments are focused on the gaming space. There's less of a fight there. Now, if they can win DeFi, these entrenched interests, these corrupt interests, then they'll maybe come after gaming next. But right now, the fight is with DeFi. And I don't think they'll win because the people don't want it. And the people are starting to wake up to what's going on and this corruption that's going on because, gosh, the amount of people say the U.S. is a capitalist society, but it hasn't behaved like it. It's been behaving like a fascist society, which fascism is just socialism. In fact, the Nazi Party itself called it the National Socialist German Workers' Party. In other words, socialism. So fascism is where the government allows private industry to still own things as long as the private industry does what the government wants, but at the same time, they get in bed with each other so that the government is doing what those private actors want. And they love monopolies, and more monopolies have been forming, like some of these things getting bigger and bigger. And the U.S. is supposed to stop that with the antitrust laws, and they have not. Why? Because they're in bed together. Hey, we'll let you do things we're not supposed to let you do. As long as you let us do things you're not supposed to let us do. And that's been going on. And that's why they're fighting against crypto. Crypto brings an unparalleled amount of transparency to things. Like people are like, oh yeah, bad actors are going to use the blockchain. It's like they are not using the blockchain. You mean you want a permanent immutable record of all your financial transactions out there where anyone can see them? Do you think bad actors want that? No.
Right.
There are a few chains where all the transactions are hidden and stuff that they could use, but just a few. They're not transacting on these permanent ledgers where all the transactions can be viewed. Why? It scares them to death, because all you have to figure out is once you find their wallet address, you can find every transaction they made.
Yeah.
But that's the excuse the regulators make, right? Oh, crypto is so dangerous and bad people are going to use it. But that's they don't tell you the real reason. They tell you a story. Now, back to the gaming side, there's where traditional gaming is. In fact, you've been covering a game that's actually been around for decades, or at least the idea and the IP behind it, Zelda. When does Zelda go blockchain, if ever?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if Nintendo's going down that path anytime soon. I mean, they're in the console market, so they're about as proprietary as you can get. You know, they're even really onerous about sharing stuff, even on YouTube, even if you use it, you know, as within the public domain. But they do have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is coming out this week. It's coming out in a couple days, May 12th. So if you guys are Zelda fans, I mean, that's going to be probably the biggest game drop in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, since they essentially started the console, they had Breath of the Wild. This is the follow-up game to that. So, and if any of you guys are streamers, I'll tell you what the big streamers do is they cover the new big games. Every new big game that gets dropped, they cover it. They'll cover videos that are made about it, and they'll live stream it themselves. And that's how they get a ton of viewership within that first few weeks of a game being dropped. So this is a big one.
Interesting. So Zelda's coming out. I didn't realize it was coming out so soon. So what I think about is, yeah, like that is the big question. When is Zelda going to go on the blockchain? But as we see this battle for the future, right? A lot of games thought mobile games. So a lot of these big gaming companies, they didn't pay any attention to mobile games at first, right? And they kind of laughed at it. And I think Assassin's Creed tried to build like a version of Assassin's Creed on mobile. And it was an utter fail because they tried to put a PC game on a tablet without rethinking how people would interact with like a tablet or a phone. So it was a failure. And so they said, see, this doesn't work. And then you had games like Clash of Clans make ridiculous revenues because it was built this way. And I think and after a little while, then the gaming industry was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we're missing out on tons of revenue. I think that happens, but how does blockchain gaming get interesting enough that can attract traditional gamers while still, you know, because most of it's being developed by these independent companies, right? So Illuvium, they're not Blizzard.
You know, I think really what's going to end up happening is you see a lot of this big IP moving into VV, and they're building their own virtual world that people are going to be able to go in, play games, have their assets, all that stuff. And so all these assets that essentially all these IPs that aren't fundamentally gaming IPs are going to start becoming available through a lot of these different crypto avenues, and which is going to draw a huge crowd, even if people don't really know much about crypto. And then other IPs, all of a sudden, Nintendo's going to be like, wait a minute, we need to get on VV too. They're, you know, DC and Marvel are making tons of money just by putting their models models that they already have made that they've been selling for years, or these old comic books that they haven't published for decades, you know, putting them on this crypto market, all of a sudden they're making tons of cash with it. So I think that you'll probably see something similar. And I think that Vivi is really the avenue in which mainstream IP will get adopted into crypto. I think that's very likely. They're very well poised for it.
I hadn't ever thought of like Blizzard, maybe not coming around to making their games blockchain enabled, right? Because they like their trap value. But maybe they take some of their legendary characters, right? And they put them on the blockchain. They make a bunch of money from that, and they really start to wake up. Like maybe some company comes and pitches them, hey, you've got this intellectual IP. Come, we'll take the 3D models and we'll put them on our app. Maybe it's Vivi. And they, so then Blizzard starts making all this money off of models that they already had designed and everything. And they really just had to okay it. And the amount of hours that they spent to put it on was minimal, almost very few hours to even get it ready. And then they make, millions of dollars over a few years. And then they're like, wait, I think we're missing the boat with this blockchain thing. And maybe they start to wake up. I know a company that you and I are both invested in, Devio, is building Litcraft. And Litcraft is interesting from a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of their transactions are straight on the blockchain. Now, normally, that can't happen because most blockchains are not fast enough. But Devio's blockchain can do millions of transactions per second. However, is that the way for things to go? Like all this stuff ends up being on the blockchain. It's amazing. Just process it almost like speeds a centralized server could do. But when you and I were talking about it, and I asked you, I was like, so where do you think blockchain gaming goes? Because I do believe ownership, this idea of ownership, it will take over everything down the road because games that don't want to comply, they will have to in order to stay relevant. But how do we get from here to there?
Yeah, I think Devio, I think, is a good example of a pathway that could be taken in order to get gaming completely on the blockchain. Now, we've kind of talked about Devio in particular is permission-based, not permissionless, right? And so now, for most people, that's irrelevant and doesn't matter much. But some people might actually view that as a good thing. And partially because of that is they can do up to, I think, 8 million transactions per second. That's kind of where
I think that was the number, though. It's been I haven't thought about it for a while. I think it was 8 million in their test run. So
the blockchain itself is fast enough to be able to likely run these game engines without significant delays. Okay, so you could, and they have ways, essentially a layer where they could easily port over other developed software like the Unreal Engine on top of the blockchain. So because of that, then all of a sudden, it's not just the Unreal Engine, it's the Unreal Engine on blockchain without a ton of without having to be completely rebuilt, right? So there's some benefits there, and I could see, really comes down to, like anything, contracts and relationships with other big companies that want to move into that space. And Devio is in a good position, just like Vivi is, to be able to meet those potential needs from future customers. But yeah, I think Devio, the game is okay. Litcraft is okay. It definitely needs, I think, it's in progress of development.
Since the 4.0 release, because they integrated like a Minecraft environment where you can build a house. And or more like Roblox is what Tom said. It's more similar to Roblox than is Minecraft. But to me, I'm not very familiar with either. So to me, it looks like Minecraft. But you can build like a house, and then you can port that that image or that building essentially onto your land so you can build your storefront. And they integrated like the 4.0 release. I was just blown away with. And, I saw the original Axie game that was playable versus where it is now. It's actually come so far over the past couple of years. So I'm seeing like Litcraft and I'm seeing their progression towards something be amazing. Even though it's not like what we just saw from Chrono Odyssey, right? Which is going to be on PlayStation, which is like unreal. It doesn't even have to be, with Minecraft being one of the top games in the world ever played, and like the graphics are behind, if the gameplay is interesting enough.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Is it fair to say there's two ways that blockchain gaming can go, in that a game doesn't have to have everything on the blockchain? So think about a game and you could earn a bunch of items and it's all on the centralized servers, but then you can go to a screen and say, okay, I want this to go to the blockchain. And then you press a button and it sends it over to the blockchain. So it's not like it has to be on blockchains that can process in real time the transactions. And in order to do something like that, you need millions of transactions per second, which really only Devio has. Nobody else has that. Now, Devio isn't a permissionless blockchain. It's a permissioned blockchain, which means not anybody can just write to their blockchain. They have to have permission. And so they would have to have a strategic relationship with somebody to let them write to their blockchain because it's permissioned. Whereas things like Cardano is a permissionless blockchain. You don't have to contact, input, output global and say, hey, I'd like to write to the Cardano blockchain. You can just write to it and,
the beauty of the permission-based and the beauty of the permission-based blockchain is you can dodge a lot of those scams or people like using shady websites to steal your everything from your wallet when you connect it. Like all of that stuff ends up it can become a thing of the past, which is a huge problem. It is. I mean, that is a huge problem in crypto right now, and part of the reason why it has such a bad name from just a year or two ago. You had all these people invest all their money, and it's like, and buy NFTs and all these things, and it's like they get
protecting their wallet was, and not to click on some scam link.
Yeah, and a Twitter account will get hacked or a Discord account will get hacked and put out a link, and they think it's actually straight from the company, and they lose thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep. Yeah, it is a scary environment that way, in that you can lose so much. I remember when I was pretty new in 2018, this guy I knew, he had bought a ledger, and he had bought it off Amazon, and he didn't realize that it was compromised from the get-go, because he bought it off, he's all excited because he got a discount on it because he didn't buy it from the manufacturer. And then like 18 months into it, he had about $25,000 on it. It all got drained. And he just didn't even realize that was a possibility. So it is still the Wild West, which is why massive gains can be made, but it's like risky space. And you have to understand as much as you can and protect yourself in a lot of different ways, because we are swimming in shark-infested waters. But it is in these shark-infested waters where you can go from $1,000 to $1 million, though these are shark-infested waters.
Yeah. I also wanted to kind of get back to other gaming, just like mainstream gaming. Diablo 4 is having what they're calling a server slam also on May 12th. So if you guys like to play Diablo, you can go in. If you essentially have to purchase the game in advance, you can pre-purchase and then play with the server slam. But there's different rewards associated with participating in the server slam, reaching level 20, and then killing one of the main beasts in the game called an Ashaba. So they have all the same rewards that they had in their beta release previews that lasted for a few days. Plus, they have this new Ashaba horn for your mount, if that's something that you guys are interested in. But that is going to happen May 12th through May 14th. So again, like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, one of the biggest releases by Nintendo in the last 6 years. Diablo 4, I mean, they had Diablo 3 released almost 10 years ago. probably 8-9 years ago. So this is another huge release coming up this week. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in gaming right now, if you guys have been following it at all.
I've only been following the gaming side again deeply. I got in the last bear market. I got into where the MMOs were and what MMOs were successful. And so this, I've been taking some time. I did play Diablo. I didn't realize I accidentally picked like a boring mage, right? Like, and I hate the characters. So like even, that early reward of grinding to level 20 in that day, it was so dull for me. And I think I just picked the wrong type of character because and maybe I just don't like the Diablo 4 gameplay. Like I didn't ever play the other Diablos. So I thought, well, I should really get to understand this type of gameplay. And so that's why I bought the game and was playing it. I think I just picked the wrong character because I'm like, this sucks. Even grinding, I think I got to level 12 and I'm like, I'm done with this. I can't stand it anymore. Whereas other games like Call of Duty and stuff are fun for me. Like Illuvium, playing it gets a little bit repetitive, Illuvium Overworld, because like it's early stages. They have like one area, Crimson Waste or whatever.
Is Illuvium Overworld, is that turn-based combat?
No, Illuvium, it's the one I was showing you earlier.
Okay.
That it's like first-person shooter, but it's kind of like if first-person shooter married Pokemon, right? So it's kind of like you're trying to go out and find these alluvial encounters where you can then capture the alluvials. So you're running around like a first-person shooter, though you're only shooting a stun gun. When you see this orb moving around, you're trying to shoot it so it freezes it. And then you can go battle inside the encounter. So it enters you in the encounter, lays out the battle arena, and then it becomes all of a sudden an auto battler, where you have your alluvials and there's their alluvials. And if you win, you get a chance to capture those alluvials. So in that sense, it's like Pokemon. But they've done a good job with Illuvium in creating alluvials that people want and cool creatures and stuff that are cool. And so
their graphics is amazing. It's really impressive.
I hope that game, and financially I'm invested in the game because I think it's got a really good chance in the crypto space of being good enough that it won't be able to attract all gamers. But Axie Infinity didn't attract all gamers. In fact, Axie Infinity attracted a lot of non-gamers to playing it. And I think Illuvium has a chance of doing that too. And so that's why I follow that one so closely. It has been interesting to delve back into the gaming world and trying to catch up and see where gaming is at. And as I was like, oh my gosh, blockchain gaming is so far behind regular gaming by a ton.
I think you and me both. I just barely started to get back into mainstream gaming. I was, we're both married. We both have kids. So it's one of those things, you game when you're single or, and then all of a sudden you get busy with life. And it kind of goes by the wayside. But now that I started this new channel and I was like, okay, well, what's something, if I'm going to be creating videos, I want it to be on something that I enjoy. And I was like, well, I know I enjoy gaming. It's a big industry and it's huge with with actually being online with an online following. So it made sense to me to actually start getting into it. And I would watch some of these videos and people would be like, some of these games looked incredible to me. Right. I was like, the graphics would look incredible. And then they'd be like, oh, the graphics are total junk. I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I'm comparing it from graphics from I guess 2006 or something. I don't know. So
yeah, back in the days when Halo launched and changed the whole video game, because I was an avid gamer back then. Right. So when Halo 1 released and you couldn't play it over the internet. No, you had to wire several Xboxes together. And if you were lucky, you had individual TVs across that so that you didn't have to share a screen. And it totally changed gaming forever, Halo. But that was back in my avid gamer days. And then life happens. And I went without hardly gaming for about 10 or 15 years. So some of it's been playing catch up. And as an investor, I feel like it's important to understand the industry that you're investing in. And so that's why back in the last bear market, I dove into where MMOs were. That is the time that I invested in Axie Infinity. I was like, hey, I think this idea of blockchain ownership of stuff will do well. I think this idea of blockchain land can do really well. and turned out to be right on that. And Axie Infinity did tremendous. Have all games done tremendous? No, some have failed. And I'm invested in a lot, and a lot of them are way down right now. Just like Axie Infinity went down for about 18 months after the land launch. Why? Because it was the bear market, and it was hard to catch a lot of excitement until money started coming in again. And that's where a lot of blockchain gaming is. Like Illuvium said, the token, the IOV token, is like way, way down from its previous highs, like $45. It was previously $1,800. That means it's on a massive sale. That's exciting to me.
And it is really tough to know, even during the bull run, especially during the bull run, actually, to know which of these companies are actually going to push through with their development. And, you know, I mean, what you and I were both doing is just almost investing in everything, right? Anything that looked potentially promising, you put a little bit of money here and here and here and here and here. You invest in 20 projects, and you only need one of them to go 300x, you know, for you to do extremely well. And the nice thing about the bear market is you can look and say, like, okay, which of these projects that came out during the bull run are still doing anything? Which of them are still in development? Which ones are still making progress? And it's much easier to see, like, you know, which ones were the scams and which ones are, or which ones were money grabs and which ones are actually planning on releasing what they promised.
Yeah, because a lot of companies, like, so some of these people don't know how to run projects and stuff, and it's hard to tell. You get hit with pitches all the time. I love this time in the environment where you see, okay, they launched and now their project's way down, and are they still working hard? Are they still making improvements? And like, this is what I want to see. So this is my favorite time for being able to pick better deals. It's harder when tons of money is coming in because you get hit with all kinds of things, and there's so much that it's hard to tell what's great and what's not, because everybody's all the teams are working hard. All of them have some kind of resume. They used to work for Google or Microsoft or Blizzard or something. And you don't really know till you get into the crappy part of the market where everything's way down. Then you see who's really working hard. So I've been hit with all kinds of like early stage investing from like projects that haven't launched in the past 18 months. And I've said no to like all of them except for Super Oracles. I couldn't pass up that project. And I was just like, okay, yeah, here's my money. And the reason is because why would I invest in something at an earlier, riskier stage when right now everything is on massive sale and you can see who's still working
even the good
hard
stuff
and stuff, right? And it's not easy to see. You have to do research and everything. But let me ask you, if you could rewind time and buy Ecomi at their initial offering, or you could buy it during the last bear market when everything was way down because it was a bear market, would you rather invest at their initial offering or like 10x down from that, or like a 90 or 95 or 98% retracement from their initial price down to their lows of the last bear market? Which of those would you rather invest in? Well, it's like the bear market, right? So the beauty of being in a bear market is like, in this massive sale, and the smart people I know are picking up thoughtful choices and just putting it in. And not even everything's going to make it, but this is like the golden time. That I know people that were doing this last bear market, not a lot of them, only a few of them. And those few all became multi-millionaires over the next 18 to 24 months. Why?
Yeah.
Because they were buying low.
You know what's interesting to me? I was oblivious, I think, on the first bull run cycle of Bitcoin. And then it was, I think, 2017, we kind of had that next kind of big bull run and kind of gained quite a bit of notoriety or a lot of publicity publicly. And then I thought that was like, oh, that's probably just a one-off. And then this third bull run happened. And I was like, and I said to myself, bull runs like this don't come in cycles in other industries. You look at the .com, there was the .com boom and the .com bust, and that was it. And now
For a long
things
time.
stabled out. And
Yeah.
so with crypto, the fact that it's had multiple bull cycles like this, I was like, this is one industry where it actually cycles differently than all these other industries that we've looked at. So, you know, I looked at, and I was living in Puerto Rico at the time when just after that first peak, because I moved there for tax incentives for my business at the time, and I met all these people that had made tens of millions, even more, off of crypto, and I was like, well, I missed that cycle. And then when it happened again, I was like, oh my god, all these guys were telling me to buy Bitcoin at $2,300. And I didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now it's like, all right, I know. I saw that it's cycled several times. I'm not going to be the guy that, you know, watched all of his buddies get rich off of this last one and then be still sit on the sidelines for the next bull run. Because now you have institutional investors that own a ton of Bitcoin. You don't think that they're going to artificially create a bull run? Like if they have any opportunity to do so, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
They definitely have a plan. And what's interesting is, what was it, Europe or something I was watching, that they, starting in 2025, central banks are allowed to invest 2% of their balance sheets into crypto assets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. In 2017, we were just trying to get anybody bigger than John McAfee to say something positive about Bitcoin. And here you have central banks going to be buying digital assets, though right now they're fudding it. Why? Because this is when they stock up, and they know the game, right? Institutional investors, they know the game, and it is in this space. I get why there's certain people that make the arguments that say, oh, these people are too dumb to invest and take risks. You run into that. Some aren't willing to educate themselves, but I don't like the idea that because you're not rich, you get locked out of the juicy investment opportunities, because maybe at your starting point, your financial education is low and you don't know how to invest, but that's your starting point. And what's cool is with things like YouTube and other media, you can get a doctorate level education from literally YouTube on just about any subject. And other things there, right? This information, you used to have to go to university to learn all this kind of stuff. So over a period of a few years, you want to become an investor, you want to think like an investor, you want to understand how to become an expert investor. Over a period of a number of years, you can delve into it from people who know what they're talking about. So in YouTube, you get to pick your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely want to look at their resume, because some people are good at certain things and some people are good at other things. And so there's a lot of people who don't realize that. And so they look at people who aren't good at investing, but have a lot of views because they're good at publishing or they're good at entertainment. And then they think, oh, they're good at investing. And they're not. They don't know how to think like an investor. They're just good at publishing to YouTube and getting the algorithm to support them. And that's okay. Like, maybe some people just want that. They want the entertainment side. But those looking for investing, you're looking for people that have experience in investing so you can follow them and learn to think like an investor. One of the challenges with this is very few people who are good at investing will take the time to do a YouTube channel. Why? It doesn't pay crap versus other alternatives. It's almost like a service project.
Yeah,
So
or a passion project.
Passion project. Like Crypto doesn't share his deep dive research he used to share on altcoins in 2017 and 2018, where he would do all this research and share it on his. No, he just covers Bitcoin in short videos, and he does trade leveraged Bitcoin, but he is a brilliant investor. Does he share that brilliance on his altcoin research anymore? No. Why? Doesn't pay. So I can't say I blame him. Abe, thank you for the shout out. He said, Jay, the content you provide is first class, brother. Many will look back and wonder why they missed the bull run. Well, yeah, should have been watching Crypto Rain. I was doing the research anyway. I started this channel because I was like, I'm deep in the research anyway. Why not create a channel and share it? In fact, if I created a channel and share it, that will create a situation where I will have some subscribers. So I'll be able to go to projects and get them to talk to me on the channel so that we can ask them the questions we want to ask them, so that we can find out what's going on as good as we can from the team. What does their body language tell us? How do they answer the questions? Then we could do that together. So it's definitely been a win for me because of this channel. I've been able to do better research and have reach to projects I wouldn't have been able to have. So I can ask them those questions. Do I get paid a lot on YouTube? I make about $150 a month from YouTube. Like, that's what I pay for my thumbnails per month. So no, I don't really make money from YouTube, and it's okay.
I would say too,
partners like Wand Chain that give us Wand to give away to our members, which is fun for me, right? I get to give away projects, amazing tokens, one that I believe in. That makes it fun.
Yeah, one of the beauties of your channel and also your Discord group is you provide a level of information to new investors. I would say, we've known each other forever, but at some point we just kind of had casual communication, and then we really didn't start communicating a lot more heavily until this last crypto bull run, when you had your crypto channel and I was doing a personal finance channel on YouTube. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. Like, I had somebody that I could talk to or listen to and just be like, oh, he's telling me about all these projects. It was just nice to have a resource, whereas, that's why I think a lot of people don't invest in crypto to begin with, is they don't have a resource where they can go to and be like, oh, this person's, has already kind of investigated everything and done all the research, and he's kind of telling me exactly what he's doing. So, and especially in your Discord too, because if you have a question, you can go into your Discord and you're there all the time talking to people.
Yeah, the Discord is gated in that they have to join the Patreon to get access to the Discord, and I purposely gated it. And the reason I gated it is I used to throw a lot of parties when I was single, and I used to throw them for free, and I would just say, bring a food item. We have this nice house anyway. Like, I rented it with like 5 other roommates. So we had this really nice house, amazing pool, amazing backyard. It's a lot of fun. I was like, and so let's invite over like 300 people. And they were great. The parties were great, but you would get these people that would come and they would just whine and complain about everything. And oh my gosh, this party sucks. What's interesting is I started charging $20. Not because I needed the money. In fact, I refused to make any money from it. I just took the $20. I gave it to some girls that were more organized than me and had them organize everything and go buy the food and everything. And then, you know what happened? All those whiners and complainers never came. Why? Because they were sitting at home whining and complaining that I was charging $20, and the parties were so much more fun. Mm-hmm. And so with the Discord, I purposely gated it. And you know what it's done? It's cut out all the whiners and complainers. So those that make it from Patreon, they go on the Discord. They are a solid group, brilliant people, like good minds, good, solid people. They're all there. And it's created exactly the type of environment I hoped it would. Much like the parties that I used to charge $20 for. It just acts as a screening fee. And it does amazing things. And then there's some people at the higher level. If you're the gold or diamond level, I do give you personalized attention. Anytime you ask me a question, I get back to you on it. Also in our Telegram group. The Telegram group is free. And if you tag me in there, I will almost always respond to you. It might not be right away, but almost always, every once in a while, I go through, find where I'm tagged, and I respond. And I'm frequently in there too. But I am in the Discord a lot more. What's funny is we're at this like terrible crypto winter. And I remember this point 4 years ago. And like you were saying, we have these cycles and they're amazing. And that's why I'm here. I'm so excited. Like, I left real estate, and I love real estate because real estate is a great way to go from poor to rich over 20 or 30 years. Unfortunately, my first cycle in real estate, I got a divorce, which totally wrecked my plans. And it was a high conflict divorce. And so like by the end of the divorce, I wasn't just worth zero. Now I went from about a millionaire to about zero. I actually went to about negative 200,000. It was very costly, expensive, stupid divorce. And so then I had to dig myself out of a pit, and I was digging myself out of the pit, reaccumulating some real estate, and I found crypto, and I was like, oh my gosh, short and condensed cycles with high volatility. Okay, you got to do some research. And though I do find a lot of people on YouTube want you to do all the research and then tell them what to buy, I don't do that. Why? Because that could be construed as financial advice. I'm not going to tell you what to buy. You have, like, what I offer is sharing information that helped me learn to become an investor. I'm not here to tell people what to buy at all. I did create this channel to share with people how to think like an investor, and it's a journey. You're going to be alive anyway. It's like an education. And so why not become good at this? So my YouTube channel will never get to be 10 million subscribers, and that's okay, because there aren't 10 million people on YouTube in crypto that are looking to do the hard work to learn to become an investor. Now, if I just told people what to buy, possibly I could hit that. And, but then I also put myself at risk for, am I like becoming a financial advisor? And secondarily, I don't want to do that. I'm not passionate about that. I'm not passionate about doing all the research so everybody can catch a fish. I'm passionate about sharing with people how to research so they become amazing investors themselves. And that's what I'm passionate about, so that people learn to think like investors, because I think that betters the world.
Yeah,
Cool.
well said, for sure. Anyways, I love your channel, Crypto Rain. It's incredible.
I want to thank our audience that joined us. Normally we have Paul join us for buy, wait, or sell analysis, and he is joining us tomorrow. He's traveling today. So I asked Banlocker to join us, pretty impromptu, as we were talking yesterday, and he's like, yeah, sure. I'd love to join you. I do have Banlocker's YouTube channel down below, and he's covering gaming. And I thought it would be an interesting discussion, because I know Banlocker has been following crypto for about 2.5 years. And, but even before that, you were in the gaming industry, and you've been an investor for like 2 decades. So I thought you would bring some good insights to the viewers.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on. You've got an incredible audience. That's one of the things that I've really noticed about what you've been able to create. And you were talking about, like, whether you have 10 million investors or small, some even like 10, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. There's a lot more to do with building an audience that is really a community more than anything else, right? You can get likes and subscribes by posting a piece of content that's informative, and then next thing you post, like, nobody has any type of relationship with you, so they don't watch anything. But you've done a really good job in terms of building a community and relationships with those in your community. It's something that's been fun to watch over the last couple of years. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Look, the crypto market is slow right now. It is. And, there's a lot of indicators that say the market's going to take off, and maybe it doesn't, though. There's conflicting information as to whether we're about to hit a major bull run, or whether we're just going to trade sideways or even downward for the next year until the Bitcoin halving, and then things start to really trend up going into a much bigger year in 2025. I don't know which way it's going to play out, but I do know we're at prices that are amazing, and that those that take the time to research where things are at right now and make smart decisions are setting themselves up for some massive gains when the rains come. And the rains will come again. You will see it, and you will be amazed. You'll wake up and you'll be looking at your portfolio growth, and you won't believe it's finally happening, especially after the crypto winter being so boring. You'll be in shock and disbelief that, wow, this, your thesis was right. Thanks so much for joining us. You guys know what this wrap is all about. Just really reinforcing the principles that I use to make millions in the crypto space. Remember, because I was talking with Dr. Stuff the other day, and somebody was telling him Omi was dead. And there's a part in the song where it says, Bitcoin is dead, because that is what they say at the bottoms, right? That it's dead. And yet that's usually, for me, that's usually a signal to buy if I have a good reason to believe that the team is still working hard and there's actually nothing that's specifically really going to kill it. Thanks so much.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the post that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic to dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. The time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking at this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go with the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I'll follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.